You have tuned your subspace communicator to Feature Please, a full voyage through the Delta Quadrant. My name is Joseph.
My name's Peter.
We were jamming one more episode in before you take off for the hinterlands of Atlanta and Dragon Con. And you went on at length last week speaking about the virtues of the hardcore party scene / adult good times to be had there.
Absolutely.
Have you identified any Voyager-related content that you will be able to consume while you're there?
Yeah, man, it's kind of a lame showing. Like, there was a lot of really good stuff lined up last year, I thought. And I think their guest list overall is not as great for my purposes. They've got some bigger names. They got Shatner's going to be there, and I think George. But, man, I don't know if I want to sit in those big rooms. I'll probably go hit up Garrett Wang's thing and hit him with some of the deeper questions that we've knocked around here. I really want to get his take on some of the writer room stuff, and specifically I want to ask him about like if the cast kind of was aware when the show became aware of its own history and started becoming self-referential.
Did it improve in the way that we have sensed it improving?
Yeah.
Is that confirmation bias, or is that actually something that happened?
Voyager specific, like I said, Garrett Wang's going to be there, and actually the People versus Star Trek Voyager is going to be doing a live podcast, and depending on what I got on my schedule at that point, I might swing by just to check it out and see how a live podcast looks. You and I have done live podcasts in another life, in another hobby.
Very true. Yes, in another life we did them in front of audiences. I think we did maybe 4 of those. And yeah, it could be a little tough. You got a room. Like if the room's rolling with you, it's one thing. If there's kind of wallpaper, it gets harder. But I'm glad you mentioned that the People versus Star Trek Voyager was doing a live show, because I saw that too, and I was going to point you in their direction. They're definitely, but they're behind us. They're actually going to do Scorpion Part 2, I think is their live show.
Really?
Yeah. So I've gotten into the habit of listening to them a bit, because now their ideas won't taint our takes, because they're half dozen episodes behind us in terms of pacing. And I don't agree with everything they got to say, but I will say they're probably the second best Voyager podcast out there. They got that going for them. You know, keep working on it. They might get there someday.
You know, I'll tell you what, man. As a peace offering, why don't I go to their live cast? I'll print off some sort of web award so I can officially present them with the second best Voyager podcast on the internet. Award.
Yeah, second best. Their audience size probably is an order of magnitude larger than ours, but you know, that's just,
you know what though?
We like to keep it underground here.
I want to see what interactive choose your own adventures their audience base has created.
That's true. We got that going for us. We have the only...
Show me their spicy meme lord.
They don't got what we got going community-wise. We might have a smaller number, but we have the deeper cuts. And I think I like it that way.
I love it that way.
So what did we watch this week, Peter?
We watched Season 4, Episode 7, Scientific Method.
All right. Okay. Listen, I know that the last few weeks I have tried to be a bit of an apologist for Star Trek Voyager, and perhaps I went a little bit native, and you've been the doubter. I'm really hoping we can agree that this episode was good, because I enjoyed it. No caveats. I liked it.
Ooh, that's big fat negative, Joe.
Damn it!
Sorry.
Really?
I was going to ask you the same question. Really?
Yeah, that wasn't too much 7 to 9. It was the right amount. It was funny. It had some some amusing beats in it. Interesting space conundrum. A little weak in how they rolled it out there at the end, but I still think the idea was strong behind it. Some of the dialogue was top notch, particularly from Tuvok. We have the episode of Star Trek that allowed me to personally identify with the Star Trek character the most. I loved it.
Harry Kim. I've always seen you as a Harry Kim.
That's true. I do have weird sex fetishes and remember the womb. But so you didn't like it, huh?
I wouldn't say it was bad, but I'm not going to put it as a good. I will say it does have an excellent open. We start off with B'Elanna trudging through some Jeffries tubes. And it got me to thinking, like, what exactly is where is the right place for the chief engineer to be? Like, thinking that the most important engineer, the one who's your bridge liaison, is mucking around in Jeffries tubes, like, doesn't really seem like right management protocol. But I guess if nothing else, that's what B'Elanna's tried to, they've tried to do with the B'Elanna character, is that she's not a traditional Starfleet officer, and she does like to get her hands dirty. But there she is in the Jeffries tube, and she pops open the door, and she's surprised to see Seven of Nine sitting there in a third different outfit. And we get a little bit of dialogue, and we quickly find out that the reason why B'Elanna is there is to try and troubleshoot a problem that Seven of Nine has basically intentionally created, as she has started redistributing power in the ship in anticipation of the
the astrometrics lab. And I figured this was a conversation that you, as a boss, could appreciate. One of your subordinates mucking around and causing problems because they didn't fucking ask you to do something, didn't communicate with you. Like, this is some fucking real world shit right here. Like, you think you're helping? You're not fucking helping, John.
Yeah.
He's like, you're not fucking helping. You're actually hurting. I'm trying to get some shit done around here, and now I found out you're the one that's making it not work.
Voyager's done this a few times now, where they start laying down a breadcrumb trail of conversation where I start getting like mad, and I'm like, B'Elanna's got a lot of fucking nerve busting 7 and 9's balls about jumping command structure and just, this can-do attitude, when right there in the script she catches herself and says, I just was on the other end of this exact speech 3 years ago, when Captain Janeway was basically beating into my head that we need to be team players here, you're going to cause problems, and here I am giving this speech. And it was this, I thought, a really cool personal growth moment. Speaking of Voyager being self-referential and aware of their own past deeds, for B'Elanna to recognize kind of her hypocrisy there, and maybe less hypocrisy and more acknowledge her own growth as an officer.
And that moment of reflection also kind of gave 7 of 9 an opening to, acknowledge her mistake in a more or less, for her, sincere fashion.
I thought that was really good. And I think that 7 of 9 has had to say, I'm sorry, a couple of times now on screen. The last one that comes to mind was her fudging some calibration with Harry, and Harry called her out on it, and she's like, I guess that was just my human side. But her getting caught doing something bad, and I think growing through the experience instead of just being needlessly antagonistic or stubborn.
My favorite part of the open, though, is Thomas Eugene Paris. Have you ever cut out of work early? Just a little early. Maybe swung by, got some flowers for the lady, made up an excuse so that you could have a romantic interlude, perhaps in the late afternoon.
In her place of business?
maybe not in her place of business. Just skating out of your duties just a little bit, taking advantage perhaps of some of the work copier to get something done. Maybe grab a few office supplies on the way out. Tom Paris skips out on his shift early by making up an excuse, and then uses a fucking site-to-site transporter while also replicating flowers for B'Elanna.
That is
just some abuse of your work privileges that I can understand. Like, this is the Tom Paris I really appreciate. Of like, I care, but I don't care enough to not use the fact that I have 24th century super science at my disposal to make my hookup with my lady friend go that much more smoothly.
So you're saying your bonding point with Tom Paris is time theft?
Yes, yes. I guess the inner boss in you does not appreciate this, but
No, not at all. And I'm glad you brought up this. Yeah, he really does have a laundry list of bad things he does there. I mean, the replicator rations are his to spend as he sees fit, but yeah, the site to site transport, which he uses a site to site transport to beam himself into the Jeffries tube above Balana with his arm hanging over the side. Like, how do you even program that into the computer? That seems like you're really trying to create a situation where a foot or a hand ends up in the bulkhead.
well, I'm sure there's protocols for that sort of thing to make sure that the
Did he
computer
lay
doesn't
down-
let you do that.
Did he lay down prior to transport so he was in the right position?
Whatever. It's rearranging your damn molecules. It can put you
I'm
however
just
it wants to
saying.
put you.
Well, listen, they got to have their phaser away team fight party stance ready before they beam down. And I want to say he's using the transporter for a flirty little fling. Meanwhile, later in the episode, when Neelix is on the floor dying, no mention of an emergency site-to-site transport for old Neelix. No, he's Space Cats. Well, they're not too good for just the hallway. Fuck the transporter, but
yeah, I'll throw him over my shoulder and get him there. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. Everything's fine here.
He gets in, and we get dragged into yet more boring Tom and Balana bullshit. And they treat us to one of the most stale, shallow on-screen kisses I think we've ever seen in Star Trek. It looks like 2 3-year-olds trying to kiss each other with these little pecks on the lip. But luckily, before we're forced to sit there and watch their awkward kiss, they turn into like X-rays, and we see their ribs and their stomachs and their muscle. And this is the new trope of the show now. It used to be soup, and then it was people getting locked in jail, and now it's aliens observing Tom and Balana's mating rituals. You'll remember the last time we saw this was dinosaur people.
There's a stupid line of dialogue of, oh, I just felt like I was being watched, because, of course, they're being watched, and they have to make sure that every viewer fucking knows that they're being watched, even though they just essentially showed you that through the alien scan. 100% agree, of course. As always, everything having to do with Tom and Balana's romance is stupid and has none of the prerequisite chemistry or passion to make it worth watching.
I think the biggest effort on both of their ends is to make this relationship as public as fucking possible. I think our first interaction with this was it Day of Honor? No, it was after Day of Honor.
Yeah, well, there was 2 instances where they clearly word was going to get out. But there was the one when Day of Honor, when they got back to the ship and they said right in front of the doctor, hey, let's go fuck. Right at the end of the episode. That's literally what they ended on. And then the second was, I think, the last episode where they were Tuvok was getting promoted. And
Revulsion,
Revulsion, they were making out in the fucking
the hallway right in front of the mess hall. Like, so every
right where all their coworkers are, and then the doctor came in on seeing them making out there again too.
There's one way in that room and one way out of that room, and they are standing there at that bottleneck. And every sexual or flirty or any interaction that they have, pretty much up until the very end of this episode, happens in public. Like, they are hardcore voyeurs, and they actually put a pretty interesting reason as to why that might be so intense there. But these are 2 people who almost have to be going out of their way to be as public as possible with what is going on. Starting, like you said, their very first kiss was right in front of pretty much the whole fucking crew.
What's the right way to put this? I don't know about your experience with this, but in my work life experience, it doesn't take much for people in an office to start gossiping on if person A and person B are hooking up. Okay? That's just my life experience. That it doesn't take much suspicion at all for other people to speculate on that. And that's just kind of human nature. People like to fucking do that. They like to talk and speculate and ooh and ah and whatever about it. And that's with no evidence. I don't think 24th century people are so enlightened that they are not A, going to have that impulse, and B, when you start physically showing, affection for each other in public, that's going to be a big fucking hint for people, and word's going to spread super fast. And oh yeah, you made out in front of the doctor. I'm sure he's never going to mention that to anybody. Like, the fact that they go on for go through halfway through this episode trying to act like no one fucking knows they're doing this is absurd.
I wonder if even more, and all their arguments, like when they're stuck on Hoth and like they're flirting and stuff there, like, I wonder if people aren't gossiping about like, oh, they're hooking up, but it's just the own Voyager commentary. Like, these guys are such a terrible couple. It's so boring watching them kiss and make out. How many times is Tom going to accuse her of putting up walls? Ugh, this is terrible. I wish they'd break up already. So that's stupid. We find a legit humorous scene, I thought, of Janeway laying face down on a massage table in her quarters, and the EMH is doing like a deep tissue sweetest massage on her and really giving her a hard time about what bad care she's been taking of herself, which has been kind of an ongoing theme, right? That she's a workaholic that, pushes herself to her own detriment.
It makes sense that being a captain of a starship would not leave much time for self-care, and the overall idea of perhaps conveying that thought, I don't object to at all.
Mm-hmm.
You're out there dealing with space horrors every day. You don't have time for, a healthy breakfast and a workout. You're going to be stressed. You're going to have to deal with that. And I mean, to our points about Federation antidepressant, she's like, can you just give me a fucking hyper spray? I don't want to deal with this. I just want you to inject me with some magic space drugs and fucking move on in my life. Give me the oxy, doc. Give me the oxy.
I need some fentanyl, please.
I mean, we're both from Ohio and it's 2019. It's tragic, but it's also fun. But Janeway's not getting her hands
ain't
on
you got any more of that space pixie dust? Well, no, I'm sorry, Captain. We haven't started jamming Borg nanoprobes into every corner of this. His TNG is a real funny thing in the first season, especially, right? Where Gene Roddenberry tries to lay out his vision of what is life in the 24th century. And there's a lot of stuff they do that we just want to ignore and say, well, we don't talk about that. But you can't. It was a whole season. It is the DNA for all of this, right? And there's a whole episode. It's season 1, episode 9, The Battle. And that's the one where Damon Mock or whatever hides that Ferengi thought device in Picard's shit, and then he pulls the Stargazer, Picard's old command, out. And Picard starts getting plagued by these mystical, crazy, strange illnesses that Beverly diagnoses as a headache, which they have all but eradicated. Like, they make this whole big production in this episode about no one has had a headache for 60 years and how crazy it is that you have one of these because it's a side effect of this Ferengi thought device. And that's one of those things, that those notions that have gotten left by the wayside, that there's not this stress, there's not this fatigue element that humans still have to endure in this enlightened future. And she's just had this terrible headache for what feels like weeks now, and it's not going away no matter what they do. And it will go on to become a pretty significant part of this episode. But headaches specifically have always been one of those things I thought is really interesting in Star Trek because of, again, the big deal they made all the way back in season 1, episode 9 of TNG.
I agree with your overall point that was kind of a goofy Gene Roddenberry thing. That it makes so much more sense that there's just some things like that 24th magic space medicine can't really just make go away.
Yeah, like Prezi squares.
Like Prezi squares injuries, murdering children, and also that, you know, you could stress yourself out and get headaches, and that's just part of life. I mean, not to go too deep IRL science, but the brain is, you know, a deeply uh, complex organ that's very poorly understood by today's science. And who's to say 24th century science is going to be, you know, perfectly understanding of it? And
Well,
this feels way more right to me than the whole Beverly Crusher, I can't believe you have a headache thing. Is that, yeah, we can in fact alleviate these symptoms, but, you know, you got to fucking eat right and exercise and treat yourself correctly if you want to avoid the little discomforts of life that come with not doing these things.
but I thought that scene overall was very cute, and that's not that's not a praise I'm willing to lay on Voyager often. Like I think a lot of these scenes usually come off as stupid and piss me off, but the little interplay there between the Doctor and the Captain was really good, and ultimately Chakotay calls her up to the bridge because they've got some binary stars that are super dangerous and gravity event horizon hell well, but they're going to get some really keen readings on it, so they're going to chill out there and grab them. Janeway's too fatigued, and she goes, all right, Chakotay, you're in charge of this. I gotta go. This headache's causing me problems. And then we cut back over, I think, to Tom and B'Elanna, who Tom shows up looking for some more action on the clock. And B'Elanna's like, yeah, I've got those readings you need, but they're upstairs in my upstairs workstation. So let's go up there and start making out all over this console. And
That console up there, that is where the Hellmouth formed.
yes,
Remember?
yes,
That is the Hellmouth that crewman Jonas was dumped into
yeah,
by Snarf.
it's a murder
So-
weapon.
Here they are, rolling around on this console, and they even have the sound effects in there of like beep beep boop beep beep boop boop, right? Of that shit's getting activated on there. It's like, holy shit, you are right next to your giant explosive antimatter device that fuels your whole ship. You're pressing buttons on a console right next to it.
You're
And
dry
right
humping her up against the.
And right behind you is where a fucking Hellmouth showed up like a year and a half ago and ate somebody. What the fuck are you doing? You roll around and then you press the wrong buttons. You might eject the core, you know, open up another goddamn Hellmouth. Like, you guys are endangering the lives of the ship so that you can what? Jack, you know, B'Elanna up on there and get her leg above your fucking shoulder. Just go for it. Like, are you fucking crazy?
Not just the Hellmouth, but now that I've gotten a good view of what that is, right there to the left is the quote unquote armory. So you've got rifles and grenades.
The pipes!
Knives!
Holy shit!
Starfleet
Oh
knives. Like there's a lot of history in this little warp core loft. For that to be her little personal office, like I'm pretty sure that part of the ship has to be haunted. And that's also like the bridge that dude fell off of and broke his back.
Seriously, this is a deadly part of the ship.
This is not where you want to be, you know, getting frisky. Or maybe you do. I mean, again, they're terrible voyeurs. Maybe they're like, hey, you know, we've made out in front of the whole crew. Let's go make out in front of Jonas's ghost.
Okay, so hauntings aside, the next, guy without a pulse that comes up is actually Tuvok, and witnesses them clearly making out on the panel, and you know, delivers this some information B'Elanna asked for, and then Tom comes in the next scene and does what I call and you know as the hey buddy.
Oh yeah.
Tom tries to hey buddy Tuvok of like, you didn't see us make out, right? You're not gonna mention that, right? Like, you don't have to say anything about it. And he's very much a Vulcan about it. But I gotta say though that Tuvok in this episode, I don't know who wrote his dialogue, but he's in a punchy mood. Maybe that's like what they did to him, as they like increased his sarcasm gland,
which is
but,
already
like,
pretty big to start off with.
Right, but he's just like shutting down his inquiries, and then he like makes the straight up ask of, "Hey, please don't mention it." And he just kind of turns to Tom and says, "You're not asking me to falsify something, are you?" Like straight up, just like you realize that you shouldn't actually be asking me to not mention that I saw that. Like it's the first hint of what is to come, which is, I will say, Tuvok visiting the burn unit.
Yeah. When's the last time we really had a Tuvok centric episode? It's been a while, hasn't it?
Rise?
Yeah, that was a long fucking time ago.
Is it Rise? Ugh.
Tuvok has grabbed a lot of ire from us. We've also criticized Tuvok hard on being a character that just isn't good to write for. That, what is the right way to use Tuvok versus all of the wrong ways. And I think really the Tuvok that we've seen over most of season 4 has actually been pretty good. All things considered, he hasn't really had any standout moments where I've like been rolling my eyes or hating that he's there. I think that they've done a really good job finding like the sass vein in him and following through on it consistently, and he's growing on me.
I gotta say, maybe that's part of using him less.
Yeah.
We've some of our least favorite episodes have been Tuvok centric episodes because he is poorly used. He is not the character you want to introduce into a episode where, for example, he has to care for children or be the romantic partner to someone or be a space cop, space private eye. But he's good as a supporting character, and he's well used in this circumstance, in that role, in this episode. And he's got maybe like 3 key scenes, but they're all like he punches up, the scenes really well with how he uses his screen time. So I appreciated it.
Did you notice how very, in my opinion, obviously pregnant Roxanne Dawson has become at this point?
Yes. And as I mentioned to you, that they really start to shoot her in reshoots in particular for different episodes. You can see it because obviously those get done later. And then as the season has gone on, like I think she was like 3 months pregnant, like when they started filming. So like it's getting obvious, and she's going to start wearing the coat soon.
Yeah. My wife's pretty pregnant right now. So, I'm very familiar with all the pains and woes there. I know about the swelling of the feet and discomfort and all that other stuff. And all I can do is sit there, really sympathize for Roxanne Dawson, that not only is she pregnant through all of this, but has all of that crap on her face and has to sit on that chair every day and have all of that crap put on her face. And it seems miserable. So all the more power to her for being able to sell these scenes that she's in and deliver.
There's definitely there's some episodes that take place later on in the season, obviously, as she gets more and more pregnant, where it's just, it reaches the point of like, damn, you are super pregnant and still doing this. Like,
Yeah.
They come up with more and more creative ways to hide it.
You're going to stand behind this console. Now you're going to stand behind this chair. Now you're going to stand behind this shuttlecraft.
At one point, you know what? I'm not going to even spoil it. You'll have to see it to believe it. After this is when they go to the officers meeting, and they're like arguing in the turbo lift about if they're going to try and keep their relationship private, which is stupid because it already isn't. But it does result in possibly the most stern, hammer thrown down moment from Janeway ever, and she's dealt with like multiple people having committed mutiny. She dresses down Tom and B'Elanna after the meeting for essentially acting like horny teenagers and making out.
Am I to understand that you were dry humping on the warp core eject button where crewman Jonas was murdered by that cat, and where we keep all of the rifles to fight off flying germs? This is what I am to understand from my 2 senior staff members?
I mean, it's her most no-nonsense Captain Jellicoe moment that she has ever had on the show.
Yeah,
thank you. And it's over Tom and B'Elanna making out in front of their coworkers. Not Tuvok having committed mutiny, not Balata having committed mutiny,
Not
not
Chakotay having committed mutiny.
mutiny. No, it's how dare you to want to bang on the clock.
Not Tom having broken into Harry's quarters and hovered over him bragging about his sex toys while Harry's trying to sleep. Not Harry Kim needlessly murdering people on Sex Cougar Planet.
I mean, it's a meme at this point of how forgiving that she is.
Not Lon Suitor for killing someone and then hiding them in the wall.
But it's the stark nature of the fact that she never ever seems to have this side of her come out is made more apparent by having her do it now over something so petty, right? Like,
right.
And I think that they're trying to show you, oh, there's something wrong with her because she's acting this way. But to me, it's like, I think there's something wrong with her that she never acts this way. Like, shouldn't the captain have this mode? Like, let's talk about Picard for a second, can we?
I love talking about Picard.
Okay. There was a Red Letter Media video I watched about the Picard TV show that they're discussing why they're worried about that show and if the people involved really understand the character. And something that is said on it by Rich Evans is that Picard is a deeply reserved character. He is very much a stern and respected figure of authority on the ship for all 7 years. Like, his big emotional connection that he makes by the end of the show is he decides to go and play poker with his friends. That's it. That's the first time after 7 years that he decides to go just like have friends.
A hangout.
Yeah, like these people who are the closest thing to family that I have, that I've saved the universe with, I'm gonna go hang out with them. I'm going to allow myself to do that, right? And it's so well done with his character. Of course, it's this big emotional payoff, but when you think about it in a vacuum, it's like, geez, that is a big deal for him. But man, talk about how reserved someone is. And then you contrast that with Janeway, who essentially is just like a mother to her crew, like automatically. Like, she doesn't have separation. She doesn't have command authority. She's mom to these people. She refers to them by their first names. Like, even when she's pissed at them. Like, it feels like it's almost an overcorrection. And I don't know if they made Janeway this way because she's a woman and they felt like that was going to be the right way to portray her command authority, is in a more matronly way, or if it was a performance choice on the part of Kate Mulgrew, or some combination, or just happened to be that way just by the circumstances of the show itself. Because they did have like one episode real early on where she like postulates on that, but then they just don't really ever talk about it again, and she just kind of is this way. But it was so stark to me and so interesting that she finally like busts out the Starfleet captain voice for 1 second. And it's like, well, she's obviously like capable of this. Where is this when it's, actually genuinely necessary?
And like you said, I mean, it's been some real dire ass stuff, that some real raw things have gone down. Looking at this in universe too, usually the show is pretty good that when someone acts wildly out of character, there is a consideration of, is something wrong with this person? Chalking it up to fatigue over and over, I guess it's clever enough that, yeah, this could be easily explained that, she's just overexerted. But when you put it in perspective like that, like Tom and Blanche should be like, you remember that time Chakotay stole a shuttle and endangered us with all that Kazon stuff, or when we stole all that stuff from the Skevians? Like, she wasn't even like a quarter mad that time as she just was here. I agree. It's something I would have liked to see more of prior to this point and without alien influence over him. But they get their butts spanked and they run off. And then we cut over, I think, to Chakotay, who's doing some late night work on whatever his little binary star is. We find out that the ship can now make coffee, no big deal, in the replicators. So,
Right, no problem. Don't have to
congra-
drink no space cat sludge. You're good.
congratulations on that technological feat. And then he grabs his neck because he gets space choked by an unseen foe. He wanders over to his very tasteful space sink, and
Mm-hmm.
his hair starts falling out. And this is the beginning of a bad time. We often say that in Star Trek, you can judge how good of a time someone's having by the condition of their hair. Chakotay is having a very bad time. All of his hair has fallen out. And although he might look like Skeletor, we will be later told that he is not, in fact, turning into He-Man's adversary. He is just really old. And I don't know if the person who did the makeup for him has just never seen an old person before in their entire life. But this grotesque ass shit they put him in, it's like this extra bone piece mask over his entire face, like the eye socket, like it looks like He-Man from Masters of the Universe with
I
a big terrible tattoo. Apparently his tattoo is like half of his head.
So the makeup they put him in is well done. It's just not old people makeup. Like, you are correct. He looks like he has some sort of weird person mask on his face, like he killed someone and is wearing it as a trophy.
I'm going to tell you what. I think that if they would have put, and I'm doing air quotes here, old person makeup, like there's two types of old person makeup in Star Trek. There's terrible next gen old person makeup where people look like they have paper bags glued to their face. And then there's Skeletor old people makeup in Voyager. And I think if they take quote unquote old people makeup from Voyager and just would have turned that into just actually an alien species instead of all the shitheads we've had to deal with, where we've got dudes with salami in their hair, and then we had like this weird bone face Skeletor guy as a whole race. I thought that would have been really cool because he looks
like he looks
hideous.
alien. Yeah, he
Very
looks
alien.
fucking. And we're making fun of the fact that he doesn't look old, but I can't. But at the same time, it's very good makeup.
I know old people. I know several old people. None of them look like that.
Yes, I've never seen an old person look like that ever. Especially like, I mean, if I ever saw an old person who looked like that, I assume it's Leatherface. Like, went and murdered someone wearing their fucking skin.
Why do you have some sort of bone armor plating on your face? Are you from an alien race that is very keen on the headbutts? What is this?
By the way, Chakotay's never seen his cured of this.
How do you even cure it?
I know, right? Like, everyone else goes, so what's going to happen is it's going to be revealed crew members are undergoing random genetic mutations. Chakotay has started rapidly aging. Neelix apparently becomes something called a Mylean, who apparently have very smelly farts and some other kind of... Yeah, they have a lot of glandular activity. Someone is going to just die of a fucking heart attack later. It gets kind of nasty. They kind of hand wave the end of like, oh, and the doctor was able to fucking fix everything, but they don't explain how they de-age Chakotay back.
I want to go back to how ugly Chakotay is, and I have it in my notes. He looks like Deadpool in the Ryan Reynolds movie when he takes his mask off.
He does.
That's exactly what he looks like as Deadpool.
He looks like a slightly more urbane Deadpool. Like, instead of like the pitting, there's no pitting, but otherwise it's very similar.
But yeah, if the doctor is able to undo genetic modifications that make his aging centers rapidly aging him, are we led to believe that basically the doctor has the fountain of youth and he can just reverse aging on anybody? Because that's kind of what we're left to believe here. But they're having the scene about how fast he's rapidly aging, which I think would be really, really scary for Chakotay. To be in a situation where you've just lost what appears to be 60, I don't know, 60, yeah, probably like 60, at least 50 years of your life in a couple hours. And for some reason, they're choosing to let you just chill out in med bay or sick bay. I'd be like, man, if only there was some sort of fantastic technology that could have placed me in suspended animation while I could still interact and help the crew
I need to
solve the
get
mystery.
like some kind of ICP song that I can put in as a drop in when you mention Juggalo Tech. I mean
Yeah.
we're like 75 episodes or whatever, 76 episodes into doing this show now. It's time for me to do that. So
Is
that's
it
my
not the technology gift that keeps on giving? I mean, of all the things for them to squander, it was just maybe that's why they didn't keep Juggalo Tech around. And of course, we're talking about the cryostasis chambers from the Thaw, where the people inside can continue to think and live in a virtual environment while their cancer-riddled bodies, or whatever the fuck Chakotay's problem is, that turned them into a walking scrotum.
he does have a fun scene where he basically has an old man fight with Neelix about who's like shit's all fucked up more, which I thought was funny. Because it's it's something that old people absolutely do, and I've seen it firsthand of like comparing how like something doesn't work and trying to basically outdo the other about how horribly just broken down their body is. But also, it kind of goes to the jokey attitude they have about the fact that both Neelix and Chakotay are both currently being, abused by whatever this strange space conundrum / cosmic horror is of the week. And they're like, whatever. I can't fucking see shit. My farts smell. I got arthritis now. Like,
My spine is fused, and that stinks because my toes are already fused, and also I only still have one lung.
That'd be like baller if you suddenly grew a second lung from that. They actually like brought that up.
Yeah, no.
You gotta mess with DNA. Can you do some good in there?
Yeah, while you're in there, grow me another lung, please.
In any case, Torres and the doctor start to investigate why this is happening. And they actually seem to figure it out, that there's some kind of contamination on everyone's DNA. And they find this like tiny little alien barcode on it. And come to the conclusion it's essentially hyper advanced microcellular manipulation. And as they are attempting to get more information, like what's going on, what is this doing? Oh, it's transmitting something, but it's not very, very strong. Suddenly, B'Elanna comes down with a case of the asphyxiates, and someone tries to start deleting the doctor, and essentially cuts that information off from being spread any further by eliminating the two people that figured it out.
Yet another case of B'Elanna getting her ass kicked. There's been a lot of that in season 4.
Yeah, she just got done getting absolutely manhandled repeatedly by a psychotic hologram trying to murder everyone. So that she just got done with that, and now she's being like choked out by having her like lungs collapse or whatever.
She's got really bad luck.
Yeah, she does, man. It's the Klingon. It's the Klingon target, man.
It's like luck of the Irish. This is bad luck of the Klingon.
And this is kind of when they bring 7 of 9 back into the story, and I felt like she was better used here, in that she definitely is a big part of them figuring out what's going on, but she doesn't dominate the story, which I think we were worried about when we started talking about this at the end of last week.
Yeah. So here's what's going on. This is, if this seems like a boring episode to you, it's because it's a big retread. Next Generation, there was an episode called Schisms, where the crew was being operated on by a alien entity that was doing all sorts of naughty things, cutting off Riker's arm and reattaching it and putting torturous devices on people so they could observe from another dimension. And although in Schisms it was very creepy and very effective, and in this it's just, I found to be very ho-hum. But a big linchpin in Schisms was, I believe, Geordi's visor implants was a big tipping point. And this one, Geordi is played by Jeri Ryan, the Borg, and they use her eyeball implants, and the doctor, who is very clever and much better detective than Tuvok will ever be, gets keen to the fact that these coincidences are something more, and the fact that B'Elanna almost dies and he almost gets deleted simultaneously on Discovery, that there is a an alien force at play here. So he transfers himself off to the holodeck, and when he calls 7 and 9 over, they've got this little ruse where he's acting like he's a I don't know, one of these holodeck characters, which I'm sure the real holodeck characters don't don't care for too much in the class warfare that we've talked about before between pleasure holograms and functional holograms.
The fact that he sort of hijacks his way in there, I thought was clever, though. Like, it is once again another mark in the meme category that the Doctor seems to be more capable at everyone else's job than anyone else. But I guess you've mentioned before you'd expect AI to do that. But I think I think the idea of him basically blending into the background, like Homer style, going backwards into the hedge, by becoming one of these, background holograms. Like, hey, don't look at me. Don't look at me. Yo, hey, what's up? I thought that was cool. I thought it was clever.
I liked him flipping up the little pedestal. And again, they're really trying to get their monies out of this Leonardo da Vinci set piece that they made for Scorpion. I like when he flips the table open and there's all the technology of the ship in there waiting, and he pulls out the little tech scanner doodad so he can adjust 7 of 9's ocular implant and give her the ability to start seeing whatever phase variant there is and start trying to track down these aliens.
Did you see the Memory Alpha notes that Robert Picardo apparently delighted in the fact that he got to wear tights, and that Jerry Ryan apparently slapped his ass a bunch of times while doing the scene, and he liked it?
I've seen him talk in public at the last Dragon Con I went to, and I absolutely reading that stuff in a Wikipedia entry, I think really puts him in a much worse light than how it sounds when he talks about that stuff in press.
No, he's just being like a delightful, roguish dude with that. Yeah. Like, it's I read it as I think isn't how it was intended, which is, he got sexually harassed and he liked it. That raised eyebrow, like, hey, that's how he means it, is sort of a fun way, because he knows he's a balding beyond middle-aged man. Like, this is like a fantasy for him that with Jerry Ryan teeth, slaps his ass.
With werewolf teeth he keeps in his bedside table.
Like, he was like, when I think he directed the episode where he made out with two random Polynesians hula girls. Like, he's like, you know what? I'm gonna make out with some hula girls in this one because I'm directing. Because that's what Bobby Picard is going to do today.
Yeah. This episode also calls a lot of attention to the fact that Tom's working these shifts in the med bay, and it just continues to beat me over the head that there's that many people on the crew and you don't have any other nursing candidates other than your fucking helmsman senior crew member. Like, what is going on here? And especially once they come under the impression that the doctors, for all intents and purposes, deleted. Like, how many times you got to find yourself in this situation before you start thinking, we really need to send someone to holodeck college to become a doctor?
I got good news. They actually directly addressed this question this season.
Really?
Yeah. Believe it or not.
Well, that's, we'll chalk that up to Brian Fuller, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. You know what? Let's give him the credit. I'm comfortable with that.
Surely not Jerry.
It's not Jerry Taylor. Go watch Hannibal. It's great. Anyway, that's my Brian Fuller shout out of the day.
So 7 and 9 starts cruising the ship and taking note of all these alien dudes who she is now aware of. And these are slightly more severe space elf type aliens with ears that attach to their jawline and look kind of creepy. And also in the creepy category is all of the medieval torture devices that are now sticking out of people's faces and weighing them down and generally causing discomfort in all of these crew members who were complaining before. And again, this is all retread of Schisms, and I found it to be very blech. Like, why are we going back to this storyline?
It definitely is a retread. You are correct, but, that's Star Trek for you. I mean, the Naked Now.
Fair enough.
That was the retread of a TOS episode. Like, they do this. And I think this was cleverly done in terms of the premise of the aliens who are on the ship, as we will come to discover, are essentially there to do medical research, and they're just kind of assholes.
Yeah, they're testing new types of lipstick and hairspray, but before they can use it on their general population, they got to test it on wild monkeys from the Alpha Quadrant. Seven goes to tell Janeway what's up. And when she gets up there, she sees that this terrible headache Janeway's been having is because she has like a whole silverware drawer full of butter knives jammed into her hairline. And she's got like 3 dudes sitting there like tinging it with tuning forks and making her have a real shitty day. So Seven understands she can't tip Janeway off in that moment. You know, I don't know why she couldn't wait 5 minutes to see if those guys go away, but they come up with an idea back on the holodeck that they are going to try to emit a ship-wide pain field out of the EPS power grid that is going to hurt everybody but not kill them, and also hopefully knock these aliens out and they will be able to retake the ship. And now, without any sort of command oversight, they start trying to deploy this, and we get 7 of 9 down to main engineering monkeying around with the EPS power grid. And it reminds me again that you just have these visitors on the ship. Before, it used to be Kess and Neelix who had unfettered access to everywhere. And even though I firmly believe that Neelix was some sort of lulzy troll saboteur out to see with what exactly he could get away with, up to and including killing crew members in B'Elanna and Tom's Pleasure Palace. But I really think 7 of 9 is a different creature on account of the fact she used to be a fucking Borg and has already 3 times now tried to subvert the ship into a very Borg-related doom.
Well, which I think that very fact gets pretty well honored by what happens, because she is trying to do this. Tuvok finds out she's doing it, immediately tells her to stop, and when she basically kind of beats around the bush and keeps trying to make it happen, he fucking rushes down there and shows up with his fucking Service 9 right on his hip, you know, a dick adjacent, just so it's like you can see it in the shot and be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, it's like he knows, like, you know what, this Borg lady's trying to kill us a couple times, and I'm seeing some shit that could kill us a 3rd time, so I'm gonna just go down there with my Glock, and I'm gonna see if I need to do something here.
We know that Tuvok does not respect Janeway's command decisions. We have watched Tuvok commit open mutiny, and although Tuvok frequently speaks about his admiration for her and this and that, we know that Tuvok at the end of the day is going to do what he feels is necessary to protect the ship, without including actually doing his legitimate job most of the time. But hey, plot needs to happen, right? And yeah, I love it that everybody around Janeway sees 7 of 9 as this very potent threat that for whatever reason Janeway is willing to coddle. And yeah, he sees the some stuff he doesn't like. I'm curious if that pops up on his security grid because that's just a dangerous thing and he's going to see it regardless, or if he's like micromanaging her access and he's got eyes on her and she's crossed a line.
I really hope, and I really do think, that Tuvok's reactions here were very much the writers simply acknowledging the continuity of 7 of 9 being a somewhat untrustworthy figure on the ship, and Tuvok being aware of that untrustworthiness and reacting very strongly to her doing something suspicious, without, for once, having to tell you that directly. I don't know if I really should give the show that much credit, but I really want to, because that's what it felt like. Regardless, I think also that 7 of 9 picks up on that as she deals with Tuvok confronting her, and she's like, oh, fuck. I have no credibility. I can't just say, trust me.
I think they communicate that. Let me start giving some credit to Jerry Ryan here, who you've praised several times for her acting. I see on her face that quick conclusion, like, fuck, this looks really bad, and I have shot myself in the foot 3 times now in this exact situation, and I can't just say, like you said, trust me, there is no reason for this to look any way different than it does. I was really expecting her to like just beat him up and rush through the process and blast those guys out um, with the EPS power surge. Instead, she grabs his gun, phases one of the aliens, knocking them out of the unalignment they were in before, and she can get him in a chokehold. And it's like, yeah, anybody coming any closer, I'm going to kill this person. And next scene, we end up with Space Elf torture dude scientist in the brig.
Did you notice that in the brig there was an extra as the security guard who was like a fucking mountain of a man?
I did not, actually.
Yeah, so I always am on the lookout for a smoldering catcher guy, right?
Yeah,
Like
you're pretty good at spotting
he's
them.
one he's one of our show sort of like
Sweethearts.
touchstones. He's our show sweetheart, yeah. And so, we often see him in these kinds of situations as like a notable background figure in these keyed off scenes because he's really good at standing in the back and looking like, a generic
Smoldering.
Starfleet guy. Smoldering, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they don't use him in this scene. Instead, they have a guy who looks like he's the dude that Frankie No Shoes calls when you don't pay the fucking bookie. Like even his uniform doesn't seem to fit. He's like wearing just like the straight up and down like Starfleet smock because he's got like too much muscle to be contained.
He
Like
picked
this
up on
is
Howdy Doody Sweet Deadlift program.
yeah, like this is the security officer that would not have been overpowered by two Ferengi. This is the security officer that would have, put them in intensive care. So they got this guy staying in the back while Janeway, who is looking like she would like to murder this woman. I gotta say, Kate Mulgrew's like face acting in the scene of like desperate, like contained rage was pretty good. They unfortunately fell on their own ass and kicked themselves in the dick when it came time for her to like have a flash of anger. It's like this lame like shove she gives her into
She
the
is
bulkhead.
not good with physical interaction acting. Like
No,
violent.
she isn't. Ever.
That's where I really think the Janeway character falls apart. Like bad writing and stuff, I'll fault the script. I have never really faulted Kate Mulgrew for bad acting, but anytime she has to put hand now, if we're talking about like other body parts, close talking, she's great at physical acting, close talking, but violence specifically, it is so awkward community theater, and it completely undermines whatever moment of insanity you're supposed to believe out of her.
Yeah, it just instead of making it the highlight of the scene, instead it's like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah.
Lame.
So the whole thing we go through is like we were just joking about. These guys are doing testing. They're not like the Vidians where, hey, our whole society is fucked up and we have fallen from grace and we are desperately trying to extend our lives because we're going to die of something terrible. These guys are just like, yeah, we want to live a little longer and be a little bit more comfortable. And we're doing it to you. You're going to be how we do these tests. And certainly you understand. And, here's this very typical, we're not that different, you and I, when you stop to think about it. And Janeway loses her shit there and says, knock it off. I'm not playing along with this. And the alien scientist says, well, here's my cards on the table. You're going to play our reindeer games. And in return, we are not going to needlessly kill too many of you. And when we are done, we will share the data that we have learned, and that's not going to be a bad deal. And Janeway's kind of like, you don't expect me to actually take that deal. This is terrible. I've got all the cards, and no, we're not doing this. And then Space Elf's like, well, either you play ball or we're going to pull the plug and just kill everybody because we've got these kill switches in place, and fuck you.
Yeah, The result is that Janeway decides she's had enough and decides at that point to risk everything on essentially forcing these guys to leave.
Well, there's one potent. We do actually have a legitimate crewman die, and
Yeah, it's basically the straw that breaks the camel's back. Is they're talking about this issue, what can they do to deal with it, and then a random crewman, I think played by Jerry Ryan's like stand-in or something. You've never
she
seen her
was
before. You
very
never see her
blonde.
again.
In expanded universe lore, she's actually a Section 31 agent.
No shit. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Memory Alpha. But yeah, so someone falls over and dies, and it's not like, oh, she had something minor. Like, she is all fucked up. Every vein in her body has basically ruptured, and her heart is exploding. And the reason I'm calling specific attention to this is that this is good acting out of Kate Mulgrew. The doctor sees the writing on the wall and is just like, oh yeah, she's dead. And Janeway loses it. And I think that this is the good side of her insanity. Because what comes after is dumb. But here she starts applying chest compression. She's trying to do CPR, and she is doing everything within her ability to stop this very, very senseless death that has just been laid on her helmsman for no good reason at all. And the doctor's like trying to curb her off of it. And I think that is the best moment of her reaching wits end that we've really seen on screen.
The Tuvok burns here reach quite a fever pitch. We didn't mention that before Tuvok basically responded to Janeway's increasingly frustrated demands about the crew with, shall I flog them as well? As if to say, no, or you're dumb.
Well, she says a bunch of department heads report him. And while we're on well-deserved Janeway dressing downs, her getting on his shit about how sloppy the ship's been run, pretty legitimate. And I want to say, too, like, a lot of all that earlier scene, because it's a result of Tom and B'Elanna getting busted making out, weren't there actual dedicated conversations between Chakotay and Janeway about fraternization?
Yeah, should the crew be fucking? Because, we might have to run this ship with kids someday.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was a season 1 plotline.
Which was a legitimate thing, and I was wishing that they would play into it. Because that was when we find out that Wildman had a baby, right?
That is correct.
Wait, you said that was season 1?
Yeah.
And they're in
sure?
season 3. That's year 3 of the voyage. So this Wildman's been pregnant for... No, Wildman had her baby, didn't she?
Yeah.
Deadlock, she had the kid.
That is correct.
Janeway has a good on-screen break trying to save this lady's life, and it fails. And then she just goes over to the con and starts acting super duper crazy and says, I am going to... Had she just simply said, all right, arm the self-destruct sequence, everybody would be like, that's the Janeway we all know and love. But she's like, nah, we're going to go back to the super dangerous Event Horizon star Hellwell, and we're going to fly right into the danger zone.
So her plan is to just fly through the middle of a binary star system and use the gravitational forces to force the aliens to just leave. And it's a stupid ass idea because, if these guys are so advanced that they can phase out of your reality and essentially murder you at will through genetic manipulation, what makes you think, like, automatically that their spacefaring technology isn't going to be able to stand up to something that yours, barely can? It's a dumb bet, but of course it pays off because it forces them to leave. I think one of the ships even gets destroyed. But the highlight of the scene is Tuvok basically saying, this is stupid. This is dumb. This is extremely reckless. We have a 1 in 20 chance of actually succeeding in this. Otherwise, we will all die. And of course, the ship gets through. There's no problems. There's not even a lick of damage, and the day is saved. It's good from the sense that Janeway's like, she has her, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore moment. And doing something rash makes sense. This is just like, really? Okay, fine. I guess this will do.
So in Star Trek, we know that the universe is fragmented and you've got alternate realities all over the place. I like to think about moments like this as like forks in the road. Like, how many other Voyager timelines just simply end here on her stupid gambit? That is a 1 in 20. I guess that's your answer right there. Is 1 in 20 Voyagers would have made it out. The other 19 would have been destroyed. Um, it's her playing space chicken, and it's her winning space chicken like she always does. And again, if we go back to Schisms, I thought Schisms had a pretty cool and a pretty creepy resolution. I think part of the problem with this episode is they flesh out the scientist invasive force. They make them a little too, I don't want to say bureaucratic, but just boring. They're just biopharmaceutical dudes trying to come up with new hairspray.
They don't tell you anything. They just have it's just the one scene with Janeway there. You don't even get a name.
Yeah, no, they don't name any of them.
Of the species or of the person. It's just, yeah, we're Starfleet fucking Purdue Pharmaceutical or space Purdue Pharmaceutical testing stuff on you, trying to make, I don't know, better space insulin. That's all they are. It's interesting idea, bad execution. That's the fucking Voyager way.
And as if that resolution of the plot is not bad enough, we get experimented on further in the form of more unwanted Tom and B'Elanna romance, where now they're on a date and they're eating salad and whatever, and people are coming up to the door, and it's just like, Jesus Christ, I don't care about any of this. And it's more of them coyly playing with each other like, well, gee, I guess we've just been under the influence of these aliens the whole time, and this has all been a sham, and none of this is real. But, they're getting closer and closer, ready to kiss, and it's just more of the schlocky dialogue that is a real turnoff and a bad note to end.
Stevie said, ew, gross, when they started making out again, which I thought was funny. Like, just like, ew. There's kids watching. Yeah, like I like to think that Harry showed up because he's into weird sex shit. Watch. I want to watch. But whatever. It's the stupidest thing to end on because it's the stupidest part of the episode, I agree. But overall, I think I liked it. Like, it's a retread, but it's still, I think, a pretty good-ass episode of Star Trek in terms of funny, in terms of good makeup, good effects, good performances, like
good effects. We just sat here talking about how Chakotay looks like Skeletor meets a scrotum.
But it looks good. Like, he doesn't look like an old man, but it looks good. Okay? Like, they missed the mark on old man, but they definitely got there on looking fucked up.
On scrotum, yes. Very wrinkly.
But I thought, like, the whole thing was well done, and retread or not, I think the thing I liked the most was it had the right amount of character development and continuity, particularly in Tuvok and Seven of Nine and their interactions down when she's basically tampering with the ship, and that they focused in on like the Doctor and Seven, but not in a way that felt like it dominated the episode. Like, everyone kind of had a moment and it worked.
Joe, this is a boring episode, and I think it's an episode that doesn't matter, and nobody is going to remember it because the next episode is what we're waiting on, and that's going to be Season 4, Episode 8, Year of Hell, Part 1. And we've got the whole bridge crew. No, I think this is probably what that new astrometrics lab looks like, the bridge, but it's not. And everybody's there, and they're all looking very proud at something. Voyager comes across a Krenim time ship that is wiping whole species from existence by changing the existing timeline. Time travel is something that we have pooped on very hard. Time travel is something that Voyager, especially Season 1, went out of its way to beat us over the head with. We've had interactions in Future's End with Captain Caveman and all of the bad time travel, and I think it's all been leading to this. We've hinted at it before with Kess's good time travel episode. We know what the Krenim are. We know that they deal with very dangerous weapons. I remember vague scraps of this, and I know that we've got Red from RoboCop coming up. So
no, not Red from RoboCop. It's Clarence Boddicker from RoboCop.
Okay, Clarence Boddicker.
Bitches
Can you fly,
leave.
Bobby?
Yeah, Kirkwood Smith, man. Also he was in Star Trek 6 as the Federation president. I don't know if you
Was
remember
he?
that. Yeah, that was
Huh.
Kirkwood Smith. Yeah, listen to his voice. You'll be like, oh shit.
Wow, he just called
But
everything to attention, then told the bitches to leave.
but he's fantastic in it. But it's commonly referred to as the Voyager movie. It's the best Voyager episodes. I think that you certainly could argue that it is exactly that. And for the listener, Peter and I are working out trying to do this one, in the way that we did Threshold, which is the last kind of like big landmark episode we did of the show. And see if we can do it in person. We'll see if we can work it out. But until then, folks, peace.